Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me in this live stream today. Hopefully everything is working fine. The last time I had some problems with the chat box, so I couldn't see your messages for some reason, but I think it's working this time. Fingers crossed. So as usual, I invite you to participate in the discussion. You can use the chat box feature, ask questions, share your thoughts, and I'll be more than happy to read them. If it gets too many, if sometimes it gets that too many discussions basically. So if you want me to answer your question, it's best to use my name. Somewhat highlight your message, use my name, or use the super chat feature just to make sure that I can see your message. Okay, so how to befriend yourself. I thought maybe we could start with this broader idea of what does it even mean, right? What does it even mean to be your own friend? What does it mean to befriend yourself? And I think from this broader perspective, obviously, if you think about having a friend, right, that technically could be applied to yourself as well. So that's a very broad idea. But I'm really curious about your perspective. What does it mean for you to befriend yourself? What does it mean for you to be your own friend? For me personally, there are things like, if I think about, having friends in my life, or even, a family, someone close to me, there are multiple components to this relationship. So I care about that person. I am concerned about their well-being, right? I make time for them. I take time for them, right? I take time to listen. I try to be involved in their lives. I try to, if I can, be a support, right? So I know maybe it is a little bit easier for me at times because, I'm having the psychology background. So, I'm not trying to be intrusive. I'm not trying to tell people how to live. I'm not trying to, constantly direct them or coach them. That's not very good. But on this very basic level, being a friend is all about simply being, right? It's this presence in someone's life. And the same kind of goes the other way around, right? Someone is my friend, and although I'm trying to minimize the expectation, someone is my friend because they are there for me. It's as simple as that. So when we kind of narrow it down and think about this concept of befriending yourself, isn't it that simple? Isn't it all about being there for yourself, right? So being present to yourself, being present to your needs, being present to your wants, desires, thoughts, feelings, emotions, right? Being your own company, taking time for yourself, taking time to, be a support to yourself. And, on many levels, if you want to get philosophical, you can say like, how can you be for yourself if you are yourself, right? You can start asking all these questions. But on a very basic level, it's all about that presence and being and taking time and being supportive. So, it is a specific attitude. It takes a specific attitude. It takes specific behaviors, right? It takes a particular, skills even, I would say, to be for yourself, to be that friend for yourself. But I'm really curious about your thoughts. What does it mean for you to be yourself? Because you saw the title of this live stream, and I'm wondering what sort of thoughts or feelings or emotions it did provoke within you. And I'm really looking forward to your messages. And also I want to double check that it's all working. It's been working fine so far. So hopefully that chat box will stay functional. So on this broad level, being a friend, right? But then I think we can go even deeper than this. Maybe it's not just about presence. Maybe it's just not just about some attitude, right? But I think in a general sense, we can narrow it down even more to a specific way of dealing with yourself or being with yourself, which I think narrows down to self-compassion. And that will be the main subject of this video. Self-compassion, again, just like we did with friendship, with being a friend, there's a compassion outside of you in a sense, right? People are compassionate towards each other. You can be compassionate towards people, towards someone. People can be compassionate towards yourself. And then you can be compassionate towards yourself as well. So on a very basic level, compassion is the same mechanism, right? What does it even mean? Compassion, again, I think it might be often quite a misused concept. Maybe, we have this idealistic expectations of what compassion is, and maybe it can create some sort of expectations based on this idealistic ideas that might not be very practical or realistic in practice. So compassion, in a very, very simple terms, it's all about being mindful of kind of our fragility or people's fragility, right? Being mindful of their vulnerabilities and potentially their pains and suffering. But even when someone is not suffering, even when someone is not in pain, we can still extend that compassion. So how can it be, right? So then extra elements to compassion in this broad sense, I think there are also things like, kindness and respect and care. That's in a very, very simple terms. Hello guys, yeah, I see the messages. Okay, really happy the chat is working. So all these different elements contribute to what compassion is in a broad sense. And we maybe, at least for me, initially when I learned about compassion a while ago, years ago, when I first heard the term, it seems to be like the same like empathy, basically. Like, what's the difference? What's the difference between compassion and empathy? Can you be compassionate but not have empathy? Can you have empathy but not compassion? So empathy is very emotion-based, very feeling-based, where we simply feel for the other person, where we put ourselves in their shoes. So when someone is crying, we might start crying as well. When someone is sad, when someone is happy, we start feeling basically the same feelings and emotions. We are able to share the same mental space that person. Whereas with compassion, I think that you don't really need to have empathy to be compassionate. You don't have to feel the same thing like the other person is feeling. So for example, if you have compassion for someone who is maybe suffering or crying, what are you going to do about it? You don't have to feel the sadness, but you know cognitively that sadness is not something pleasant, right? It means that they lost something, they're grieving something. So with compassion, it's more like you're stepping outside of the experience and you're navigating the whole space from that position, from that place. So that's the difference between empathy and compassion, by the way. So now what if we're gonna start directing that compassion towards ourselves? So compassion is, obviously, since it's not empathy, since it's not about sharing the same feelings and emotions, and it can be actually very, very distant, very, very rational in itself, then compassion towards ourselves is also not about immersing ourselves in pain or suffering and, not necessarily trying to comfort ourselves, but it's more about this a little bit more rational or logical approach where we deal with this whole situation, whichever situation we are in. And there are numerous, as I was saying, elements to compassion, to self-compassion, right? So you're kind to yourself, you take time for yourself, right? Just like we were talking about being a friend to yourself. You make that space for yourself, you make time for yourself, right? You take care of yourself, you generate this kind of attitude of remembering that, okay, you have these vulnerabilities, you can suffer if you're not careful enough. You can be quite fragile, actually, and we are quite fragile. If we think about this maybe deeper existential, from this deeper existential perspective, we are quite fragile, and we are all, kind of prone to suffering and eventual death. something that we don't really want to think about. But actually, it is subjects like this are actually quite helpful in generating this self-compassion once you realize this fragility, this inbuilt kind of tendency that things can go wrong at any time. The health you are having, the well-being that you are having, the roof over your house that you are having might be gone at any point. And I'm not here to scare anyone, but this is just to think from this, kind of broader philosophical perspective on, your life, your existence as a whole. So with compassion, you take a note of all this kind of vulnerabilities and limitations, right? You are there for yourself when you're in pain, when you're suffering, when you need comfort, when you need, some uplifting, for example, right? When you are going through some challenging feelings or emotions, or when you are having external problems, right? That's where the compassion comes in. That's where it's helpful. That's where it helps us to move forward. It's like this kind of gentle and caring way of moving through life, of approaching other people, of approaching yourself most importantly, and dealing with challenges as they arise. Let me just close the window because we have really strong rain outside and I think it might generate lots of noise. So that would be the kind of general outlook on what compassion is. And obviously I think we can deduct benefits from this approach, from this way of living, because if you start taking care of yourself, right, you start feeling better, and then as you are feeling better, you can approach different challenges with higher strength, with this bigger strength, with greater confidence and ability to deal with the pain and suffering that comes your way, right? Because you are taking care of yourself, because you are making time for taking care of your needs, making time for being kind to yourself, and simply, being that friend that you might need. Because not always it will be possible to have that external friend, to have that external family, right? So with self-compassion, you're building this kind of basic caring mechanism of being there for yourself. And there are, of course, many other applications. Then your relationships improve as well. As as you get better, as you feel better, as your well-being improves, and as you are able to generate this compassion towards yourself, then of course it's going to be way easier to generate that compassion towards other people. Or maybe you are one of these people when it's super easy to generate compassion for others, but then you're holding yourself with some other different standards and you're not compassionate to yourself, which can be quite possible as well. And I think many people actually have lower standards towards others, but way higher standards for themselves. So what happens is they can be compassionate, very easily compassionate towards other people, but not have that self-compassion. So these are the kind of general benefits of self-compassion. But if we go even deeper, of course, your self-esteem is going to improve, your health is going to improve, right? Your confidence is going to improve. You will slow down. You will eventually slow down and again start working life with this kind of gentle way of being, where you respect your limitations, where you're not shying away from your problems or your challenges, but you start facing them because you have that self-caring mechanism. So that would be an ideal state, and I'm hoping that, since you're on this live stream, that's what you would like to strive towards. But very often what happens is that we end up on the other end of the spectrum. We start pushing ourselves, we start punishing ourselves, we start criticizing ourselves. Our standards skyrocket, and we have these huge expectations for what sort of person we need to be, what sort of accomplishments we need to have in our lives in order to feel worthy, in order to be good enough, in order to, maybe fit in and have some sort of social status. So in this state, confidence, rarely, if anything, that's going to be a very fake confidence, because internally we're going to feel very insecure, very anxious probably, because we don't have that kind of simple strength within us that comes with self-compassion, that comes with simple self-care, right? I think actually compassion or self-compassion could be easily replaceable with self-care. But again, self-care is a part of compassion, but it's not all there is. Again, with compassion and self-compassion, there are many more things we can be doing. It's like a way of life and an attitude that you take towards yourself. Sean writes, "Hi Sean, it's exactly what you're saying. I used to think being in solitude was wrongful, as we interact with so many people on a day-to-day basis. Now I yearn for a long time to switch on the narrative." Yeah, so you bring in this actually an element that I forgot about, which is part of self-compassion. It's that acceptance of things that we want to do, that might be important for us. This was actually a really good reminder. So I was talking, again, if we switch back to this negative pole, the opposite, or the kind of absence of self-compassion. Again, it's this very harsh, very punitive, and very kind of pushy way of living and treating ourselves, where we don't have time for vulnerabilities. We don't have time for taking care of what we really need or what we really want. Maybe it's a weakness, right? Weakness, I don't want to have any weaknesses, right? That's often associated with, maybe feeling threatened by other people in some ways, right? So we keep pushing and we keep pushing, and, eventually we start breaking down. And I think very often problems like anxiety or depression are a result of this kind of very harsh attitude towards ourselves and towards life itself, because we don't make that space for ourselves. We don't accept ourselves. We don't take time for taking care of our needs, not even for understanding the needs, right? We expect ourselves like we're gonna be immortal, or rather that we are immortal and we're gonna be here forever, and that nothing can break us and nothing will break us if we're just gonna keep pushing. So that's why I think very often that's where that depression, anxiety comes into our lives, because we can't let go. We can't accept that we are vulnerable, that we need help, that we need to take time for ourselves, that we need to just slow down and take care of our needs. That rarely happens, especially in the Western society, where we have all these expectations, social expectations, right? We rarely want to admit that these are our expectations as well. But we have these expectations, you have to work hard, you have to keep working, you have to be successful, you have to keep studying, you have to keep making money. And it's a constant rat race and rush and pushing. And in that whole chaos, where is the space for us? Where is the space for, taking that time, the 10 minutes a day, right? Taking that time to understand what is it that we really need, and take time to respect our vulnerabilities, our needs, our hurts, our pains, and deal with them appropriately, not through distractions like we used to be doing. I think that's probably the most popular way of dealing with pains and suffering in the West, so have these distractions, right? Because it's a quick fix. So all this, I think that this whole attitude of kind of pushing ourselves and pushing, and all this harsh criticism we develop towards ourselves, obviously affect our well-being, obviously affect our self-esteem, right? Reduce confidence, right? And then we go through life, I think, on this kind of a little bit fake premise that if we just keep pushing, if we make things happen, if we're gonna just fit in and do what other people are doing, everything is gonna be fine, right? But I think what happens is that it actually creates even more vulnerabilities, because we push all these needs aside, we push all these pains aside. And then the more we push it, the harder we have to work externally. But then the harder we work externally, the more pain we generate, in a sense, because we are not taking care of ourselves. We're not making enough space. We don't treat ourselves like we deserve that respect, that care, that, simple kindness, where we do something that is not harmful to us. So that creates this conflict. On the one side, we might be having all this kind of challenging emotions, and we want to distract ourselves, we want to escape, we want to run away. And that is, in my opinion, a good instinct, right? On a very basic level, like all these distractions we are doing and numbing ourselves, they have a very, very practical, very tangible, and very constructive basis in our instincts. We want to run away, we want to escape, we don't want to deal with all that rush, all that harshness from ourselves and the external world anymore. But the problem is that in practice, we are not dealing with this instinct appropriately. We distract ourselves instead. We are not addressing the underlying pain. So we continue in this conflict of pain, but keep working hard, pain, and keep working hard. And then we are being kind of torn, because on the one side, we hear in popular media everywhere mindfulness, kindness, self-compassion, just like we're doing this in our live stream today. But then the external world, so many demands, responsibilities, and we have to keep going, and we have to survive, and we have to, pay our bills and create relationships and take care of ourselves. So it's like kind of this dilemma between being and doing. How much being can we have without neglecting our lives, and how much can we keep doing without hurting ourselves in the process, like we've been doing? Hi Bill, I'm glad you joined us in this live stream. So perhaps the solution to all this chaos, all this mess, because then, the dilemma is, do we keep pushing? Do we try to improve? Do we engage in all this personal growth and work and development and, whatnot, and, improving ourselves and learning and reading? Or do we kind of pause and, take time and try this gentle way? So I believe that the solution is to obviously try to find something in the middle, right? So that obviously you need doing in your life, and obviously you need being, right? Obviously you need to keep pushing a little bit to achieve something, but not too much, so that you're not suffering too much, right? So that's where I think self-compassion comes in, because it, again, like I was saying on the beginning of this live stream, it's a little bit like stepping back and, respecting your struggles, respecting your challenges, respecting your limits, but without getting too emotionally involved. So it doesn't mean that, you have to completely immerse yourself in this, emotional, mushy experience. Although that could be very beneficial to some people, especially those who avoid feelings, that immersion and, perhaps pain or even suffering or sadness, whatever feelings or emotion comes in. Because that helps you to, that's all, that could be self-compassion as well, because it helps you to process things, that helps you to attend to all these issues in your life that you've been ignoring. But essentially, I think with self-compassion is this kind of middle way where again, you respect your limitations, respect your vulnerabilities, you respect your, weaknesses, potential weaknesses, and the fact that, things can go wrong at any point, really. You don't know when. And with self-compassion, you remember about these potential things that could go wrong, but without, panicking, without catastrophizing, without thinking like world is going to end tomorrow. With self-compassion, you slow down, you take this kind of gentle and kind way towards approaching life. So you know that you have all these weaknesses, you know that you have all this, you're not a robot, You're not a superhero. You're not built from steel, right? So you have your own needs. You have things that need your attention, need your time. But you also need to be mindful, obviously, of the external world and the demands that are out there, because you need to do something for a living. You need to survive in that world, whatever that means for you. Some people could be career, other people could be a simple job, other people could be, maybe traveling or living in a jungle, whatever it means for you, but you have to somewhat survive. But in order to survive, you need to attend to yourself first. You need to attend to these weaknesses, to this fragility that you're having, to all these little things in your life that need your attention. And maybe some people might feel a resistance to that, because then, like, I don't want to be weak, right? I don't need all this, mushy things, or I don't need to pay attention to my pains or anything like that. I can just move forward. I can be super strong, and stuff like that. And I think maybe for some people it kind of might provoke even some shame, resulting from this process of acknowledging our weaknesses and fragility, because it places us in this maybe a little bit vulnerable spot where we might feel dependent on something or someone. And again, that's where self-compassion comes in. You attend to these feelings, you might attend to this shame, you attend and accept to all these little things that can feel like, like maybe you're worthless or incompetent or too weak to deal with the external world. But with self-compassion, the more you attend to these little things, the more you attend to your hurt, and you take time actually with yourself and being vulnerable if you need, right? And slowing down and taking time to be kind of, gentle and kind with yourself. That actually gonna create more strength later on. So obviously the question now is, how do we get to that place? How do we get to that place? Any thoughts? Because I think I'm giving you all this information, so now I think we need to start perhaps putting them together. So how could we get to that place of self-compassion? We know the obstacles. We know that pushing and the inner critic, being punitive towards yourself, is not very conductive. We know that distractions, not very conducive to self-compassion. And obviously in this process where when you're not spending time with yourself, when you're ignoring your needs, when you're ignoring your pains or fragility, and you don't care if you hurt yourself, how can you be friend? That's not being a very, very good friend to yourself. So I think with self-compassion, it, just like with anything else really, it all starts with that mindfulness and awareness of what you are doing right now that is hurtful. How are you hurting yourself already? What do you see as hurtful? I think it all comes down to recognizing where you are hurt right now and attending to that. But on this maybe a little bit broader level, I think with self-compassion, it's also being mindful of the little habits that you are already doing that might be harmful or destructive towards you. So it all starts, again, being aware, being mindful, looking at how you are talking to yourself, internal dialogue. Are you very punitive? Are you critical? Are you pushing yourself too much? Are your expectations too high? When you set, for example, goals for yourself, are you excited about these goals, or do you feel like, I don't want to do it, this is too much, and you are dreading the goal, you are dreading the new habit, you are dreading, to start exercise, or to go for a walk, or just simply build a new habit. So with self-compassion, you need to basically tune the volume down of everything, of your expectations, of your pressure, of your drive, of literally everything. Just turn the volume down and start listening more than doing. It's finding this, gentle way of silence and being with yourself, and being mindful of what you are doing right now. What's productive, what's kind, what's helping you to feel better, and what's distracting, what's not helpful, what might be destructive. So you need to be mindful of those before you can change anything. Sean says, looking at ourselves with radical honesty. Yeah, of course. So with mindfulness, you become aware of all these things, and you need to be, honest about why you're doing certain things as well, which then leads you to discovering what is it that you need. Right? Why are you behaving in particular ways? Why are you pushing so hard? What's stopping you from taking 10 minutes, maybe once a week, just for quiet self-reflection? That's all it takes. It just turn that volume down, and although we on that rational level, yeah, maybe we are rushing. We have to rush because we need to get that job right, we need to make a living, and we're not going to be here forever. But actually, contrary to that, the better attitude, in my opinion, is to slow down and catch yourself, in a sense, so that when you keep rushing, you can't be with yourself all the time, because you keep rushing, and then you feel maybe anxious, stressed out, because you keep rushing, you keep pushing yourself, you keep expecting that you have to be that great successful person. With self-compassion, it's all about slowing down and accepting, okay, these are my capabilities right now, this is what I can do. If I do more, I'm going to start suffering, I'm going to be in pain, I'm going to be hurt. So it's also, it's a little bit like cultivating a little plant, right? You need to, you don't like with that, we don't really rush a plant to grow faster or to grow better or to produce flowers. But what we do is we take time, and we have to be patient with plants. We water them, we make sure they are in right conditions, we take care of them. But we don't tell the plant, oh, come on, grow faster. It's ridiculous, it's not going to work. We can keep saying that, but it's not really going to work, because each plant is growing at their own pace. And I think that's the way of self-compassion. If we treat ourselves a little bit like plants, in some ways, where we're making sure that all our needs are met, that we can be present, that the pace of our life matches our capability right now. And then as you improve, as you become more and more present, more attuned to yourself, more attuned to your needs, then most likely you're going to speed up, because then you're going to be more comfortable. But what happens is that very often we as I was saying, we keep rushing, we keep pushing, we keep chasing the next goal, the next thing, the next achievement, the next distraction, and it creates this gap between our being and what we are doing. Yosra, hopefully that I pronounced that right. Being compassionate to oneself starts by forgiveness. Forgive yourself when you think you didn't do enough. I really like this concept, forgiveness. Yeah, I haven't talked about it today, but yeah, it's very, very important, forgiveness. With self-compassion, again, it's that understanding and taking time for being with yourself. And I think understanding naturally will generate forgiveness. Because with understanding, you generate this perspective of why you acted in a specific way, whilst being mindful and respectful of your limitations. So for example, what you did years ago, you were a different person, you had different skills, you didn't have the knowledge you have right now, right? So also recognizing kind of your development and movement through time as you've been becoming this particular person. I think forgiveness comes naturally with this process, with this understanding, with this kind of being with yourself, when you understand why you did something, and understanding what your limits were at that time, and why, which kind of tells you why you acted that way. But also another element of forgiveness that comes to my mind is this idea of fragility. And we are all imperfect, fragile human beings, right? We would like to be perfect. We would like to be good people. We would like to be successful. We would always want to do the right thing, but that doesn't happen. Why not? Because we are imperfect human beings. That's what we are. That's how we came into being, for whatever reason. And maybe that's the path. Maybe that is the perfection within the imperfection, because then we can learn that in that way we can learn and improve, because we are making these mistakes. That's an interesting comment from Miko. I sometimes play a trick to force myself to build this kind of compassion. I could attach emotions like faith or family or destiny, because looking at myself bare can be uncomfortable. So for Miko, and it's actually the same for me as well. Compassion is very experiential. So we can generate this kind of feeling, specific feelings, when we start thinking about humanity as a whole, about other people, about this whole fragile existence we are all inside, right? We are all part of, and with compassion, again, we seem to be attributing, yes, self-compassion and other people compassion, but compassion is essentially just compassion. And I'm thinking that with self-compassion, basically, and it was one of my clients that actually shared this with one of my sessions. There was some doctor, and I forgot her name. She mentioned about 3 elements of self-compassion, which is, I think, kindness, mindfulness, and connection with a greater whole, with the humanity. So recognizing that you are just like any other human being, right? Maybe not so much on this very personal, individual level, but actually the deeper you go within you, the more similar you will be to other people, and the same other way around. The more you go outside of yourself, the more similar you will be to other people. So you share the biology, you share literally the same weaknesses like most people on earth, right? We all have the same kind of potentialities to act in specific ways that might be embarrassing, that might be hurtful, that might be shameful, that might be not aligned with this ideal self of who we think we should be. A question from Bill: how would you apply PTSD and Schizoid concepts to befriending yourself? So again, I think it comes back to recognizing these vulnerabilities. With PTSD, with PTSD generally the recovery takes lots of emotional processing, grieving, and most importantly, attributing your emotions to right situations that either happened in the past or happening right now. So it's all this very emotional journey of processing these emotions. So with self-compassion and PTSD, I think it's all about being gentle with yourself, taking time to process all these feelings, all these emotions, where you simply recognize that certain things maybe in your life weren't your fault, that you were vulnerable in the past. You're still vulnerable, although you're an adult right now, for example, or you have more knowledge, more skills, but it's still respecting these vulnerabilities and possibility that you might get hurt. So with self-compassion, taking time to process all that. Thank you, Calvin. Means a lot. And with Schizoid, I think it's similar. With Schizoid, I think very often with Schizoid personality, it's like not acknowledging the vulnerability. We can't be like, okay, I don't need other people, I'm independent, I don't have anything, I need from the world, I don't need help, I can do things with myself, and I'm very, self-reliant, so sufficient, whatever you want to call it. And I think what Schizoid basically had to build this wall in childhood to protect themselves. So they had to take care of themselves from the start very often. So applying self-compassion to all that is actually reconnecting ourselves with this, sensitive and emotional and vulnerable state. I'm not going to go too deeply with this because this is not a live stream on recovery from Schizoid. But if you want to know more, I have tons of videos on Schizoid, and generally in this broad sense, although I don't specifically say about self-compassion, I might have used this term actually, but the whole recovery and living with Schizoid is all about this vulnerabilities and self-compassion and gentle way of being with yourself, not pushing, not pretending like you are, immortal and invulnerable and nothing can touch you. So that's in short. So I invite you to, if you're interested more about this disorder, I invite you to have a whole playlist that I've made. Thank you, Bill. It means a lot. Okay, so where were we? We were on how to get to the state of self-compassion. So I was talking about mindfulness, recognizing ways in which you are hurting yourself, in which you can't hurt yourself. And it's not like, in my opinion, at least that's how it works for me, it's not like completely, totally in your mind that you become aware of, oh man, I'm doing this habit, I know it's hurtful to me, I'm maybe eating too much sweets or overuse alcohol, whatever that is. But it's more like this realization when you connect with this vulnerability, when you connect with that vulnerable self within you that gets hurt through your habits. Like, you really have to feel it. You really have to feel the way you've been treating yourself. If it's a good way, you're gonna feel good, right? It's like kind of like nourishment for yourself, for your soul, for your being. Whereas with not taking care of yourself, having bad habits, hurting yourself in some ways, which mindfulness can help you figure out how you do it and if you do it and what's wrong. It's this realization, it's like connecting with this experience of, it might be the same experience you might have towards other people. It's like you're realizing, you're seeing someone, maybe very sick or hurt, and you have this kind of maybe emotional response, a little bit like you feel sorry for them, you feel like you wish you could do something about their suffering, or you start doing something about their suffering. It's basically the same response you get with self-compassion once you start realizing, once you start reflecting and connecting with this kind of fragile and vulnerable self. I'm not sure how else I can describe it, that's why I'm a little bit repetitive, but this kind of simple way of being human, I think that's all it is, a way of being human. So as a human, you can get hurt in many different ways, right? Your health can suffer at any point if you're not taking care of it. But even if you take care of it, it's eventually going to fail anyway. But at least, as you're taking care of yourself, your physical body, your mind, your emotions, at least you reduce the suffering that can come to you and probably will come to you in the future. So with self-compassion, it's all about being mindful of all this possibility and being mindful of the fact that things will start getting worse probably for you eventually. If it's not, within a month, then maybe within 5 years. If not within 5 years, it's going to be within 20 or 30 years. Things are getting more difficult generally for everyone as we are aging, as we are getting older, as we develop more and more problems within our lives. So with self-compassion, it's having this respect for this fragility of our nature and reminding ourselves of this bigger picture, of this whole kind of existential picture, that it's not just about being successful or pushing ourselves or creating things in our lives or being this this and that kind of person, but respecting this bigger picture and respecting things that can go wrong eventually. So if we're not taking care of ourselves right now, if we're not taking this compassionate stance, if we're not slowing down, if we're not kind to ourselves, not only will we be hit by these potentially bad things in the future, but we will make things even worse for ourselves later on. So unless we are able to bear with the consequences, then why not? But then do we really want that? Do we really want to have more and more pain in the future? So with self-compassion, I really went on a pessimistic rant there. So with self-compassion, it's recognizing that fragility and recognizing this bigger picture and respecting kind of, in a way, I think, your future self as well. So, considering the consequences of your action, considering what happened to you in the past, right? So you don't push yourself too much. But you simply kind of take your time and recognize and respect all these limitations and fragilities that might come to you anytime or might be already in your life. I think another thing that could be very helpful is self-compassionate, so that you develop this more gentle approach towards yourself. And I know it's quite contrary. Now that I'm talking about, this then gentle and kind approach, it's quite contrary to, for example, this idea that we have to keep pushing ourselves, we have to go to the gym and, have the best diet and be super strong and stuff like that. There is a place for self-compassion in all that too. Even in pushing yourself, you can still be compassionate because you respect your limits, you recognize your limits, and you work with these limits. You don't try to, break the wall, but you take, one piece at a time. So with self-compassion is taking that time, taking that approach where you are not on a path of breaking yourself. And it's very easy to break yourself, whether mentally, emotionally, or physically. So that's something to remember with self-compassion. And I think it also all comes down to, but it takes self-awareness. Again, it takes self-awareness and mindfulness for this to work properly. But I think very often it helps to lower the standards, generally, lower the expectations you have for yourself. So the reason why I think it takes self-awareness for it to work, because maybe your standards are already very low and you might not want to lower them further. So with awareness, you know what your limits are, right? And then you set your standards slightly above your limits perhaps, right? So you start stretching comfortably. If your limits are here and your standards are here, and you keep pushing towards the standards, you're going to break yourself most likely. And that's not self-compassion. So with self-compassion is that gentle way you take your time, you recognize your limits, and compare the standards you're having for yourself, the goals that you are having for yourself with the standards. And if there's a huge gap, right, you will know by, for example, really dreading your goals or your routines, your hobbies, whatever that is. You will really dread your, responsibilities and duties. You will feel drained. You will feel burnout. You feel like maybe even depressed. Like there's not enough space in your life. So all these little emotional states that you get in your life, these are really good signals that your body is sending you that perhaps you are doing too much, and that's the place. And that's the place where you need to start lowering your standards, basically. So your body knows, your mind and your body already knows when it's too much, when it's becoming too much for you, or when it's too little. If your limits are here and your standards are here, for example, right, then you're going to start getting bored, you're going to be unmotivated, you're going to be lazy, you're going to feel like there's not enough meaning in your life. So matching the limits with your standards, pushing the standards just slightly, could be very helpful with this, kind of middle and compassionate and kind way of living. Renault asks, late to the stream though, do you host this often? I usually do them at the moment once every 2 weeks, on Sundays at the same time, but I will be changing a time soon. I will talk about it at the end of the live stream. Max says, all of this involves knowing where you are at whatever you are doing, right? But how do you find out where you are? So, as I was saying, I think all your body, your feelings, your mind is giving you all the signals necessary, really. We just need to read them. So I think in essence, that's what I've meant by kind of listening to your needs, as, for example, right? Listening to your needs, listening to yourself, really. That's why you need to spend time with yourself, to be mindful of what is happening. So again, if you feel like, burnout, if you feel fatigue, if you feel depressed, if you feel stressed out, if you feel like you can't relax, if you feel like, the world is gonna end in a day, right? These are pretty solid red flags, in my opinion, that you need to kind of slow down and tone it down. But then the other extreme, in my opinion, is things like, being unmotivated, bored, right? Kind of lazy and low energy. In my opinion, these are kind of signs for not pushing enough, because then there is not enough challenge and you're kind of sluggish and there is not much going on in your life. So it's all about, like I'm saying, like your body is already giving you all the information that you need from the environment, from yourself, from your state of being. It's just a key of slowing down and developing this mindfulness and awareness of listening to it. That's the compassionate way. You take time to listen to what is happening, right? But with the society, with the Western world especially, we keep pushing, we keep distracting ourselves, and it's rarely we take time to listen to all that, all this information that's already there. Sean asks, what if you don't trust yourself enough to be kinder to yourself, for example? For example, when you emotionally outburst time and time again. Right, so you get the information already that there are emotional outbursts. What do they mean, first of all? Right? Where are they coming from? Are they the reactions to the present moment situation, to what is happening right now in your life? Or could it be like a kind of, for example, projection or an emotional flashback that's coming from your past? So, for example, you've been in a situation in childhood where, someone said one thing, other person said the other thing, and they started laughing at you, for example. So then you started feeling embarrassed. And then in adulthood, you might recognize the same cues of the same situation. You recognize similar person, another similar person, they might say even similar things, but they don't laugh at you. But then your body, for example, picks it up as they are laughing at you because that happened to you in the past. It conditioned you. So conditioning and things like this can be, misleading in a sense that you get this emotions or feelings, for example, and you think they are reactions to the present, but they are actually reactions to the past. So that's something to be mindful as well, but I'm not going to go too much into it because it's usually, it's very often associated with all this maybe complex PTSD or even conditioning and all this unconscious stuff that it takes time to walk through this. So that's why you slow down, right? You're compassionate. You take time to understand yourself. So I think very easy way, I used before a metaphor of a plant, but I think it's also very useful to use a metaphor of a child, right? Do you keep pushing the child? Do you, you tell them that they are ridiculous or that their feelings or emotions don't matter. No, you are compassionate. You take time to understand the child, and only then you can, you can take care of them. You can, you don't have this strong emotional reactions to them anymore, because you understand they have limited capabilities. And I think treating ourselves a little bit like children who pretend to be adults, I think can be very helpful as well, because it helps you to slow down and actually understand yourself and examine why you're acting in a specific way. Or even if you don't understand, that's fine as well, but you are taking this time with yourself, for yourself. Okay guys, so I will be finishing up. Are there any more questions about self-compassion or any other questions? So we know, just to kind of quickly summarize, so building that self-compassion is all about slowing down, caring for yourself, listening to your needs, taking time to meet your needs, respecting your vulnerable and fragile self, so that you spend time with yourself, you take time to attend to your needs. And that should be your priority before everything else. And you will notice that as the more time you spend with yourself, the more time you take for your needs, for your self-care, actually your performance in the external world will increase, because then you have more energy, then you feel better, then you are more kind of prepared for the external challenges and things that might come your way. Okay, so any more questions before we go? And in the meantime, if you'd like to continue the discussion, I will be a little bit longer online, and you can join Mind Mastery community on Discord. I'm just posting the link in the chat. So if you'd like to join the community, if you have any more thoughts, if you want to connect with like-minded people and, talk about self-compassion or something else, we have a small book club as well. If you'd like to join that, then I invite you. I will be online a little bit longer on Discord if you have any more questions. But other than that, it's been great connecting with you. I will be taking a short break from live streams. So next time I'm going to go online, live, will be in about 3 to 4 weeks, because I will be moving. The time of the next live stream will be different as well, but I'm going to give you a notice up front. So again, thank you very much for connecting today. It's been really good. I really enjoyed this live stream, and I hope you got lots of valuable information. If you're interested in personal work, I do individual coaching. So basically, coaching is all about exploring your ideals, exploring the goals, exploring your challenges in your life, where my role is to facilitate your growth and development, and help you to understand yourself, help you to raise that awareness and work on whatever goal you find important in your life. So I offer free 20 minutes consultation if you're not sure whether coaching is right for you. So you can book it on my website. You can find the link in the description underneath the video. Thank you very much for joining today, and I hope to see you in the next live stream. In the meantime, I will be posting next videos, and I hope you have lovely evening or day, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.